Hi guys, Sharon Chan here, licensed marriage and family therapist. I wanted to take some time to talk about the highly sensitive person slash empath and the narcissist and the differences, a little bit about the background and differences between the two. But also the second part of my video, I hope to talk about how to address the thoughts that might keep a HSP or an empath locked in what we call a trauma bond with a narcissist. Now, there are many factors to that. I won't go into every single piece of that, but today I want to address specifically the thoughts to build the awareness and to empower people, especially the HSP or the empath, to regain control of their life and to kind of figure out how to do that a little bit, okay? So first of all, I want to start by saying that the highly sensitive person and the empath usually have traits of internalizing things, people's emotions, moods. They also are probably quick to take in another person's feelings and take responsibility for them. They may also be pretty hard on themselves and want to be giving and caring and empathetic and nurturing. I think it's fair to say that usually HSPs and empaths are givers by nature. They usually want to see the best in people and want them to succeed and do well. Now, what does that mean though? If we go on, if an HSP as a personality trait or an empath as a personality does not properly gain a sense of self, which is also very connected to your boundaries, what you're okay with, what you're not, what your needs are, then what happens is we call it this psychological term called codependency, or some people say they're love addicts, where they're kind of needing that validation from the outside source in order to feel internally good about themselves. Now, if we go on the opposite end of the spectrum is the narcissist. The narcissist uses overt or even covert strategies to kind of take from the HSP or the empath. And this might look like gaslighting, shaming, blaming, brainwashing, these kind of ways to love bombing, these ways to kind of hook the HSP or the empath in, but also then kind of discarding them and making them feel like they're less than or not good enough. This is kind of this trauma bonding or narcissistic abuse cycle that happens over and over and over and over again in a narcissistic and HSP or empath relationship. So I want to first say that, narcissism is a very, very common term. We probably hear it a lot, like you're narcissistic or I want to first say that just because a person has narcissistic tendencies doesn't mean they are narcissistic. We all have narcissistic traits. There's a spectrum of narcissism. But what I'm talking about here are people that can be classified with a narcissistic personality disorder. This can usually be identified as chronic patterns of continual narcissistic abuse, continual patterns of needing narcissistic supply in order to feel good about themselves. This can also be seen in a very big denial of not being able to look at themselves, not take ownership or responsibility for a sustained amount of time. So they might even be able to say sorry, but do their actions eventually follow up, or is there a follow-up to make changes? It's a defense mechanism, and it's something that is that they have been dealing with for a very long time, right? So with trauma bonding with the HSP and the empath and the narcissist, there's this actual trauma bonding that happens where the brain for an HSP or an empath is connected to the highs and the lows of the narcissist validation and really, really wanting more of that validation or hoping for that again to happen. what I want to speak to today is not the specific traits, or it really is to be about to help the HSP or the empath that kind of is struggling with this kind of bond or belief, to then hopefully build awareness and empowerment that might keep them stuck in this type of trauma bonding or in this type of attachment or pattern. First of all, I want to disclaim that abuse is abuse. Emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, whatever you want to call it, it is not okay. But my hope is that that the HSP, the empath, the codependent, the love addict will hear this message, and it will empower them just even a little more to have the sense of self to say, you know what, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna make it. So let's get straight to it. I also, actually, before I do that, the thoughts behind these specific interactions does not produce actions like boundaries or a specific plan to let go or to get out of the situation, but it's a start. It's a start of awareness, okay? So the first one is that the highly sensitive person or empath might think, which is a faulty belief, is that if I put a boundary and the narcissist gets angry at me or doesn't like it, then I must be doing something wrong. Now, I don't blame the HSP or the empath for thinking this way, because there's a power dynamic that's happening, right? Actually, when the HSP or the empath gets stronger in their sense of self, and they might be putting boundaries up, that's actually showing a sense of strength, right? It's saying, I don't like this, this is not okay. But when that power dynamic, let's say the narcissist is here and the empath is here, and the empath is starting to become more powerful or just take ownership of their sense of self, it will create a panic in the narcissist, right? And then that power dynamic, what will happen is usually the narcissist will get louder, more volatile. They'll start to even amp up their behaviors, whether it be shaming, blaming, gaslighting, manipulating. They might even start to even lure you in again. But all to say that if you are putting boundaries up and the narcissist amps up their behaviors and starts to make, you start to feel even more lower, powerless, that's actually a sign that the cycle is being played out. What I want you to do is to stop right now, to stop and notice that power dynamic, and to tell yourself, I deserve to be safe, protected, and respected. That's my right, and I deserve that. Again, we're working with the thoughts, not the boundaries or the actions. We're talking about internal boundaries here. Number 2, the faulty belief system that an HSP or an empath could tell themselves is, if I care enough for this person, they will eventually change. Now, there's a lot of different schools of thoughts and ideas about narcissistic tendencies, personality trait, and how they will change. But Dr. Melvin, who's done a lot of comprehensive research about this or writing, says about 1% of the narcissistic personality disorder can change. Now, that's a pretty startling response. 1%, right? Again, narcissism comes up in a spectrum and all of that. But if a narcissist has a narcissistic personality disorder, you have to understand that this comes from probably their own trauma wounds. This is their way of their defense to survive and live in this world. There's an immense amount of denial and probably the inability to look within and self-reflect. That's part of one of the traits, right? They don't have the ability to look in and say, hey, what am I doing in this situation? So it's going to be put back on the other person. So with that, I'm speaking to you, the HSP or the empath. I want you to take a step back and notice this pattern playing out and this new information, and tell yourself, no matter how much I give, I can't change someone else. They have to want to change, and I can't change them. Okay, we're gonna move on. The third one now. The third faulty belief is that a lot of times that HSP or an empath will feel is, I'm responsible for the narcissist's well-being, and it is on me to make sure that they're okay. Now, I don't blame you again, because the narcissist will use a lot of tactics to self-protect, right? Whether it be covert or overt kind of skills, and we talked about this, or tactics. And a lot of it can be like, hey, you're responsible for me. If I'm not happy, it is your fault. You know, it is because of you. It is because of this character defect. It's because you're not this or that, or look at this person, they're this way. Whatever it is, it's this projection of blame, and it's a sense of that a responsibility that the HSP feels a lot of guilt, a lot of guilt. They also, the narcissist, I've heard, also uses threats sometimes, like, if you leave me, I'm gonna do this, or if you don't stay or be the certain way, then I'm gonna threaten you with this. And it could be really difficult situations, right? I want to say that this is not easy, okay? But I want to hopefully relieve the HSP or the empath with this thought, okay? To turn in and let yourself know that everyone is responsible for their own well-being. The narcissist is responsible for their own well-being, and I am responsible for my well-being. I know, again, these are thoughts, and they're not like gonna be like this. I just want you to chew on it, okay? And hopefully it gives a refreshing and empowering message. The fourth one, I think, is probably the healing that comes a lot of times after the HSP or the empath realizes that this person probably is incapable of giving them what they need, incapable of having a reasonable conversation, incapable of being able to take ownership or self-reflect or have this relationship that is healthy, right? But the fourth one is the belief that one day the narcissist will provide the HSP or the empath with the validation that they need. Now, validation can come in so many forms, right? It can come in an apology. It could come in just saying, hey, you're good enough, or I'm proud of you. It could come in saying, you know what, I own up to my stuff, and I'm going to respect your boundaries, whatever it is. It really speaks to the core identity of a person, right? Acceptance, you're good enough, you're loved, you're respected, you're worthy, right? I do want to say that a narcissist, if they do have full-blown personality, they most likely will not be able to give you the validation that you need, that you deserve, that you long for. That validation is so legitimate, is so understandable. And especially the younger you are, the more and lacking as a kid, and the trauma that plays with that can be really, really hard. But I do want to say that I want you to turn into yourself and just remind yourself that the narcissist is not capable of giving me the validation that I so desire. I deserve that validation, and I am going to turn within myself and give that to myself, or I'm going to look to safe people to help me to receive that for myself, right? Again, the narcissist is not capable of giving me that validation that I need. But I am going to give that to myself. I'm going to heal. I'm going to heal my sense of self. And I'm going to turn to other safe people that can love on me, right? So, you know, I honestly, guys, I went back and forth with this video for a really long time. I want to say that I went back on this video for a very long time, and I sat with it. I sat with this information for a really, really long time. And the reason why the reason why it was hard to put this video out there was because I don't like labels, right? I don't like labels. I think that people are whole people. I'm in the business of hoping to see people change and grow. I love when people really want to grow and receive healing and do all that. But you know, if the facts are right that narcissists, there's only about 1%, maybe it's a little higher, I don't know, but like that people that have narcissistic personality disorder don't change, right? Or it's a high likely chance they won't change. The other part of that is then, what about the people that are being impacted by that, right? That to me is, and it gets really tricky because a lot of times the HSP, the empath, the codependent, the love addict, they will not know. They will not know what's going on. They don't have this information to understand it. So my heart and my goal here is to build awareness around not only the trait of the HSP and the narcissist, or the empath and the narcissist, but then to empower the other side of it, which is the HSP and the empath, right? Because really we can only control this, and we can only control how we respond, and we can only control our own sense of self. And I hope that this knowledge and awareness and the things that keep us stuck in these unhealthy, abusive, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically abusive patterns, there is hope for you. And you know what, wherever you are, it's okay. Wherever you are in the process, like whether it just be the thoughts or you're working on a plan to for change, I want to let you know you're not alone. Reach out wherever you are in the world. Reach out to a professional. Know that you deserve these things that we talked about today, or that I talked about today. Okay, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll put my information below. Thank you so much, and I hope this served you well. Bye.